Welcome to Binge Breakthrough, the podcast designed to help you finally break through the barriers that keep you stuck, feeling out of control around food. I'm Master Certified Coach Jane Pilger, and I want you to know that no matter how long you've been struggling or what you've tried, food freedom is possible, and I'm here to show you how. After years of therapy, eating disorders treatment, restrictive diets, and reading all the books, I was still stuck in the on-again, off-again cycle of restricting and binging until I was able to see it all from a new perspective that changed everything. Each week, I will share the strategies, tools, and mindset that allowed me to overcome my decades-long battle with binge eating. Your journey to body trust starts now. Let's dive in. Hello, trusted listener. Welcome to Binge Breakthrough. I consider you a trusted listener because I trust that you are listening to this podcast for a reason. I trust that you're going to hear something today that is insightful and impactful on your journey with food. So today I want to talk about a concept called the upward spiral. And I was inspired to talk about this concept. I actually read about it in a book called Body Kindness by Rebecca Scritchfield. And I will link to this book in the show notes. And I'm also going to do a future episode all about this book. I love this book. And it really is all about the topic, body kindness, being kind to your body, having this lens of making decisions based on what is kind to your body. So I'm actually going to do a future episode all about the book itself because I think it's that great. But for today, I want to highlight just this one concept, the upward spiral. You may not have heard about an upward spiral. You may be wondering, what is an upward spiral? I've heard of a downward spiral, but I'm not so sure about an upward spiral. So let's talk about it. An upward spiral really is the opposite of a downward spiral. But often what happens is we don't think about an upward spiral. We don't think about putting ourselves onto an upward spiral or even the concept that upward spirals exist. All we think about is downward spirals. We all know when we're in a downward spiral and what a downward spiral feels like or even looks like at some various periods in our lives. So I'm going to start by talking about a downward spiral and what a downward spiral might look like specifically as it relates to food. And then we're going to kind of turn that around and look at upward spirals as well. So a downward spiral. Here's an example of what might happen with a downward spiral with food. You make a plan of what you're going to eat. Whether you are a person who feels like they want to write out and actually have a plan. Here is my plan of what I'm going to eat. Or you're a person who, like me, I don't resonate with the idea of writing my food down all of the time. I just don't want to be a person who has to write down what I'm going to eat. But I do have in mind what I'm going to eat so that I know I've got food at home. I have the groceries that I need. So I really do have a plan. It's just more kind of in my mind, right? So you have a plan of what you're going to eat. And something happens during the day that you didn't anticipate. Maybe there were donuts in the break room. Maybe somebody asks you to lunch. Maybe you were at a luncheon and you ate dessert there when you said you wouldn't. Oh my goodness, this was me all of the time. I went to these luncheons on a regular basis, at least 2 or 3 a month. I would go to these big luncheons and I would always say, I am not going to eat dessert while I'm there. And then they were often these luncheons where the dessert is just sitting right in front of you the entire time. It's there when you get there. It's there the entire time. And I would just watch. I would watch if other people were eating dessert. I would think, oh, well, maybe I'll just have a little bit. And then I would start eating it. Sometimes I would eat it all, but usually not because I was very convinced that everybody else was watching whether or not I was eating dessert. But even then, I would decide, well, I wasn't going to eat that. And now I've blown it. I'm off my plan. I've already blown it. I might as well keep eating. So you might be thinking, well, I'll do better tomorrow. I might as well eat what I can today. Or maybe you're thinking, you know what? I've already started. I'm just going to get this out of my system so that I can start over tomorrow. Or if you went out and bought food, I'm just going to get rid of it. I'm going to get this out of the house so I won't be tempted by it. So you keep eating. Or in my instance, I would literally drive from this luncheon to the gas station and start my process where I would maybe buy 2 king size candy bars, usually peanut M&Ms. And then I would drive to the bakery and I would buy a couple of things there. And then I would drive to the grocery store. So then now I would just spend the 1 or 2 hours after the luncheon driving around eating. So now we're on a downward spiral, right? We are eating, we keep eating, not thinking about how we're going to feel because you've basically decided it's over. It's over. I've ruined it. Today's like it's over. There's kind of no getting this day back. So in my experience, when I was going through this, I was really in one of 2 places almost always. I was either trying not to eat too much. So when I would eat, I would be telling myself, don't eat too much, don't eat too much, don't eat too much. If I started eating something that wasn't, kind of within my very planned, controlled, measured environment. Or I would eat kind of like small bits at a time, keep eating, don't eat too much. And then I would go back and have a little bit more of this or a little of this. And then at some point, it hit this imaginary line. And once I hit that imaginary line, which probably, if I look back on it, it probably changed in quantity, in amount of food, however much I had eaten, I am sure that imaginary line was all over the place. There was literally no actual number or amount or quantity that turned into what I would claim or deem a binge. But I would hit this imaginary line at whatever point, and then once I hit it, I would decide, oh, now this is a binge. And then for me, once I had decided, oh, well, now it's a binge, then I was all in because my only job and focus was to not binge. And so once I had not accomplished that, then, well, I already binged. So now I'm just going to keep eating. So here we are. We're on this downward spiral, eating all day, foregoing any other well-intended plans or intentions that you might have had for yourself. And you might think, oh, this day is ruined. So maybe you don't get any movement. Maybe you were going to go for a walk that afternoon, or you were going to go to an exercise class. I would often say, oh no, I can't exercise after a binge. There's no way. So I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't even do it the next day. Or maybe you really don't do anything else for the rest of the day. Forget it. All those plans, all those things I was going to do, day's ruined. The day's over. I'm not doing any of it. And then your sleep is impacted because you're so full. And then the next day, you are so tired because you did not sleep well. And you're trying so hard to be perfect. You don't want to binge again. And so maybe you skip breakfast, or maybe you decide you're only going to drink smoothies all day long. There were times that's all I could drink for at least, I don't know, over half, if not most of a day, because I would have sores on the roof of my mouth from the binge the day before, particularly if I was eating things like cereal, like dry cereal, or anything like maybe times where I would eat like a lot of potato chips or something that with the quantities and the going up against the roof of my mouth, I would just get these sores on the roof of my mouth. So what I was even able to consume the next day was sometimes very limited. So as you can see, we are on a downward spiral here. And so now maybe we're at the next day and maybe you've just waited way too long to eat. Or maybe you're trying to make up for the binge with your choices the next day. Maybe you're thinking, I shouldn't need to eat this because I ate so much yesterday. Or maybe you are just so exhausted because you did not sleep well that your body throws up all kinds of signals to eat more quick energy, high density foods. And you get right back on that binge cycle. If you are a person who believes that once you start binging, you don't stop for days or weeks or even months, that is the epitome of a downward spiral. Momentum is a very real thing. When we start going in one direction, that momentum picks up. It gets easier to go in that direction. This is what happens with a downward spiral. We start the momentum, the energy is going towards the negative choices, the choices that we are making that are, they're really towards the identity of that person who is out of control with food. But guess what? Momentum works in the other direction as well. And this is where we can start talking about the upward spiral. The upward spiral is simply the opposite of the downward spiral. When you start making choices that feel good in your body in both the short and the long term, you're making choices that are being kind to your body, that are treating your body in ways that are going to give you the energy and the stamina and the overall, the joy, the things that you're really wanting in life. When you start making these little decisions and you repeat them, you can absolutely spiral upwards. The more of these decisions that you make, the more you will want to make. And now we are spiraling upwards instead of spiraling downwards. So what does an example look like of an upward spiral? When you start tuning in and connecting with your body, you will actually start hearing a lot of signals that you may not have even noticed before. I have so many clients who are like, wow, I didn't even realize that my body communicated with me as much as it does. I was so busy pushing through. This is just what we're doing. This is what we've planned. This is what we're supposed to do. I have taught myself over years, over decades to ignore myself. But once we start tuning in, once we start getting curious, you start to hear so many more messages and signals that were there. They have always been there. You just haven't been listening. So you start to listen to them. You start to honor them, like noticing when you've been sitting for a while and that your body's kind of just getting a little tight. So you get up and you take a short walk and then your body feels better. You kind of get this, all right, that feels so much better now. And then next, maybe at your next meal, you start connecting into your body. You start really getting curious about your hunger and your fullness cues. You're making choices about what to eat based on what would make you feel good while you eat, but also give you the energy that you need for your afternoon, for whatever you have going on that afternoon. And then maybe someone crosses your mind that you haven't thought about in a long time or recently. And you just kind of wonder, I wonder how they're doing. And you reach out and you see how they are. You start bringing in some connection. Not only are you connecting with yourself, you're connecting with other people. And then maybe that afternoon you're working on a project and you start to envision going to the vending machine or getting in your car and going out to the local bakery to buy something. But you check in and you realize you aren't hungry. You check in and you notice this often happens when you're stressed. So you choose to reassure yourself instead, knowing a sweet treat won't get the project done or give you the focus that you need for this project. This is an upward spiral. Here's something important to know about the spiral. Whether you are on an upward spiral or a downward spiral, you can change directions at any point on the spiral. It can start with one decision to be kind to yourself. So I want you to think about this. Think about how you typically respond to yourself when you eat something that you didn't really plan or intend to eat. Let's go back to that example of maybe it's donuts in the break room. Maybe it's going out to lunch with a friend. Maybe it's dessert somewhere at a luncheon or whatever it is. Or maybe you did go to the vending machine. You did go to the pantry and ate some cookies in the middle of the afternoon. So think about, how do you typically respond to yourself when you do that, when you eat something you didn't really plan or intend to eat? Just think about this in your mind. How do you respond to yourself? This response could put you on a downward or an upward spiral. I want to be clear. Eating the donut, eating the dessert, going out to eat, getting whatever it is, eating that food does not start the spiral. Many people think that it does. That's not what starts the spiral. It is not the eating of the food. It's how you respond to yourself that sets the momentum in motion. Imagine, let's say we eat the donut and you're like, oh, all right, wasn't really planning on that, but you could check in. Did I enjoy it? Did I like that donut? Why did I choose to eat it? Would I choose it again? Okay, maybe I would. Maybe that donut was delicious. Maybe, I didn't really like that. Maybe you notice, oh, wow. Shortly after, I kind of felt like a little bit of an energy crash. Or maybe you notice you had more energy than you usually do. Donuts in of themselves aren't bad. It is not bad to eat a donut. The question is, what are you checking in? What are you noticing about yourself? How your body responds to these choices? You could check in and be like, oh, well, wasn't really planning on a donut this morning, but okay, I had a donut. Now what's next? What do I want to do next? I'm checking in. Or you could, oh, I can't believe I ate the donut. I'm awful. I'm terrible. I wasn't supposed to do that. I've ruined the day. Now I'm just going to go, off and eat whatever it is now for lunch. I'm just going to start eating. I'm going to keep eating. I'll be perfect tomorrow. I'm going to be on the downward spiral if I respond to myself in that way. But I could easily be on the upward spiral, even if I ate the donut or the cookies or the dessert. The eating of the food does not start the spiral. So I was explaining this concept inside Cultivate, which is my group coaching program. And they were saying, I would love kind of a visual of what this would look like the downward spiral and an upward spiral. The downward spiral, I can kind of see, maybe I think of it as like a snowball. It's just getting bigger and bigger. But an upward spiral, what is an upward spiral like? So I've been thinking about this a little bit, and I was kind of thinking about the downward spiral as like a slide. You get on the slide, you go down. And the upward spiral, it's more like steps. Now, you could go down the slide, you could turn around and try to go straight back up that slide. But it's kind of hard to do. We've probably all tried to go up a slide in the same way that you come down. It's kind of hard, right? It's much harder to get up the slide that way. You might not even make it up there, even with a lot of effort. I like to picture this as like what happens when you're really trying to control your food. Maybe you eliminate certain foods. Maybe you go on a diet. Maybe you're trying to control what you're eating through various ways. It's kind of like trying to climb up the ladder the way that you come down. It's challenging, may not actually work. But what you can do is you can take one step and you can go around the back and you can take the ladder, taking one small step at a time. And then you'll be back up at the top sooner than you realize. Momentum is a real thing. Spirals are real, upward and downward. But here's what I want you to know. You can switch the direction of your spiral at any point with one small decision. So what do? You notice when you're on a downward spiral. It is never too late to change direction. And as I explain this is where it's like, wait, it's not like a slide. It's not like a slide because you don't have to go all the way down to the bottom to change direction. We don't have to go hours or days to turn around and change our momentum upwards. So maybe it's not a slide. Even that downward spiral, maybe it's actually more like stairs in either direction. It just feels like a slide when you're going down. It feels like a slide because of what we're thinking. We're thinking, I can't stop. I can't stop myself. I'm just like on this. It just feels like there's way too much momentum. But what if you were to visualize, maybe I'm not on a slide here. Maybe these are actually just stairs. And I can get off this downward spiral at any point. I can change the direction. All I have to do is turn around and take one simple step up to the next step. And I can do this with one question. Here's the question. What is the kindest thing I can do for myself in this moment? If you can notice, I'm on a downward spiral, but I don't have to I don't have to keep going. I can change at any point. All I have to do is stop and notice, my momentum is going this way. I just want to turn around. I can stop. I can turn around. I can see what's happening. I can choose the upward spiral, one decision at a time. And with this decision, what is going to guide me is this question. What is the kindest thing I can do for myself in this moment? So the next time you find yourself on a downward spiral, notice it and realize, okay, I can change directions at any point. So ask yourself right now, as you're listening to this podcast, before you listen to this episode, would I say I was on a downward spiral or an upward spiral? Get curious. If you were on a downward spiral, what if it was as easy as asking yourself, what is the kindest thing I can do for myself in this moment? You have already done it by listening to this podcast. Now ask yourself again. Start taking those steps upward. Get on the upward spiral. You can do it at any point. All right, that's what I have for you today. I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Binge Breakthrough. You can find the show notes and any resources mentioned at bingebreakthrough.com. If you like this episode, subscribe to have future episodes delivered to you each Wednesday. And remember, your 5-star rating and review will help others discover these life-changing concepts. See you next week.